For Aslan Media, this is Reza Aslan. It's Friday, July 30th, the year 2050. Ever since the Israelis and the Palestinians entered into a power-sharing agreement, wherein the two people share joint political and economic institutions while still maintaining a sense of semi-autonomy and still preserving their cultural and religious distinctions, the power dynamics in the Middle East have shifted dramatically. And of course, while tensions remain high between the federated cantons that make up the nation-state now known as Israel-Palestine, or, depending on your point of view, Palestine-Israel, relations between the Jewish president and the Palestinian vice president remain strong, buttressed by the peace agreement with the Arab League that followed in the wake of what is being popularly referred to as the Great Union. Now, one consequence, of course, of the Great Union is the shift in American foreign policy priorities away from Israel and toward the new Turkey-Iran alliance, which since 2030 has become an important bulwark against further Chinese expansion into the Middle East. China, as we all know, has control over the vast mineral mines of both Pakistan and Afghanistan, and they have managed to already have a couple of minor skirmishes with their regional adversaries, India, and yet the United States, ever since pulling out all of its combat troops out of the Middle East around 2020, has been able to amass those troops in Japan, Indonesia, and Taiwan in order to box China in between India and the Pacific. Now, as we all know, of course, the success of the Turkey-Iran alliance comes not just from Turkey's ascension into the ranks of the world's military superpowers. That, of course, followed Turkey's much publicized rejection of the European Union's offer of full membership made around 2030, but also from Iran's booming economic growth over the last few decades. Now that the former Saudi kingdom is in the hands of the Islamist Justice and Peace Party, Europe and the United States have been steadily flooding Iran with money and technology in order to reinvigorate that country's oil and gas infrastructure, now the world's largest. Of course, with oil topping a staggering $350 a barrel this week, Iran is poised to become the world's leading supplier of oil and natural gas. Now, no one is ready to call Iran a democracy just yet, but Iran's ascension into the WTO, the World Trade Organization, a decade ago, has not only been a catalyst for the liberalization of Iran's economy, it has created a less isolated country with a far more empowered middle class. And it has enhanced the rule of law and made the country a more responsible member of the international community. Of course, not everything is hunky-dory in the Middle East. Trouble remains in both Syria and Egypt. Those authoritarian governments are increasingly being challenged by Islamist political parties, fueled by the ideology of an increasingly strengthened Muslim Brotherhood, and supported with arms and money from Arabia's Justice and Peace Party. Now, while the troubles in Syria are being more or less contained by Turkey and by a strengthened Lebanon, which has seen record economic growth thanks to peace on its southern border, the violence in Egypt has already spread south into Sudan and east into Libya and Tunisia. The Sinai Peninsula has become a no-man's land after it was taken over by Islamists from both Egypt and Gaza. It now resembles Somalia in the early 2000s. Nevertheless, there is still reason to believe that the anti-China coalition forming between the US, the EU, and the Iran-Turkey alliance will continue to reap economic benefits for the United States, even as it creates a more stable and peaceful Middle East. Does this sound like fantasy to you? It could very well be the news story from the year 2050. We'd like to hear your news story from the year 2050. What do you think the Middle East is going to look like 40 years from today? Will it look better? Worse? More stable? Less stable? We want to hear from you. For Aslan Media, this is Reza Aslan.